Hey, what's up guys, this is Brandon, aka Inspired Author on Instagram. If you don't know who I am, I write novels, and comics, and manga. So I don't draw them, I just write the scripts for the comics and the manga. But the novels, I write myself. And I tend to operate within the fantasy / fantastical, whatever, adventure, all that stuff, that realm. Starting to break into more different genres though recently, like more, for November, for example, the National Novel Writing Month, I'm writing a romance. So if you guys don't know what the National Writing Month is, it's basically you gotta write 50,000 words in 1 month, the month of November, which it's November 2nd when I'm filming this, so it's been crazy, like how much you have to write. So basically what I'm doing right now is procrastinating my writing by making this video. But yeah, no, it's been really tough trying to grind out that many words in such a small amount of time. I feel like I should have done a lot more planning in anticipation of this crazy month. But today I'm not here to talk about NaNoWriMo, which is I guess what they call it. I'm here to tell you guys about how I got into writing. So let's get right into the video. By the way, this is all going to be unscripted. I'm just going to be talking, so if it's all over the place, that's my fault. I didn't write a script or anything. I'm just kind of just blabbering as I go along. So I first got into reading sometime when I was around the average age of when kids learn how to read, and I remember reading a lot of like picture books originally, right, kindergarten, etc. But I think the first thing that really got me into reading was, and obviously reading is a kind of entry point for how you get into writing, which is why I'm telling you how I got into reading, right? So I got into reading, I think my first series that was really captured my attention was Magic Treehouse series, which is basically like these kids, they like find a magic treehouse, they can take them back into time. I think they can get warped into different like dimensions and stuff like that. But they basically, these two kids, magic treehouse, go on adventures. Super fun, it's like an episodic thing where every book is a different story, a different adventure, which is super cool. And I was like super into it. I remember reading like a book a day, super quick reads. And I would just burn through all these books, like 40 books. And then I eventually got into Harry Potter and Percy Jackson, all that stuff. So before I knew it, like Magic Treehouse got me into reading about all these fantastical stories. And I was just completely hooked on reading. At this point, when I was around 2nd grade, I used to like write fan fictions. I used to play this video game called Toontown. I don't know if you guys know what it is. It's basically like this Disney game where you're like fighting, you're like an animal and you're like creative and you're fighting like the corporate worlds. It's ridiculous, but it's a really fun game. Honestly, a lot of my childhood was spent on that game, and a lot of my parents' money probably. Basically, I would write like in 2nd and 3rd grade. I would write in this notebook. I would write fan fictions basically of my character in the video game. And like going on all these adventures with Toontown, based on like it was very inspired by the Magic Treehouse series and Percy Jackson and all these other narratives that I was reading at the time. I'm not even sure if Percy Jackson was out at this point. I definitely read Percy Jackson later, like in middle school, so like it was more like the earlier books, right? I was reading a lot, and I was writing a lot too, in these notebooks that were completely trash writing, whatever. I was just kind of getting my ideas on paper, all fan fiction. And then I started to get into something called anime, which, you know, I would love watching cartoons, Cartoon Network, big part of my childhood, right? Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, Ed, Edd and Eddy, all those good stories and crazy characters. But at the time, Cartoon Network had this thing called Toonami, which was when they would put on like anime shows, like Japanese, like Naruto, Bleach, One Piece, Dragon Ball, like all the mainstream ones. They would basically put them on at night when it was too late for kids to watch, and I would stay up and I would watch these shows. And that was what got me into manga, which was like my mom went to the library and borrowed me Dragon Ball, which was my first manga, and I started to read it and I fell in love with it. So instead of being like a cool kid and, you know, going and hanging out with your friends after school, you know, I would always go to the Barnes & Noble, go to the bookstore, and I would read all these books for pretty much free. I would just like sit on the floor and I'd just be like reading a manga or a book or no, I'd usually read the manga at the store, and then I would buy books. So I never was buying manga. I was just reading them at the store. They were in like those paper covers where you just can't like open them. Then I would purchase the book, I guess. My parents would purchase it for me. That's what got me really into manga and anime. And I think manga was a really big inspiration for a lot of my writing. Is currently still a big inspiration for a lot of my writing. So at the time, I would. So I'd be writing my notebook, and I'd also be drawing a lot. I'd be drawing a lot of comics, or my attempt at manga. And anime, or not, manga and comics. Basically, I was playing with a lot of action figures. I would play with a lot of action figures, create these stories with these action figures, and then I'd draw out the stories in comic form. So and then I would sell them to kids for like 5 cents at school after making like printed copies and stuff like that. Yeah, I know, entrepreneur since day one, right? Yeah, I guess that's when I first started to like really get into manga development and stuff like that. But then I realized that like I'm not good at art. Like I'm a terrible artist. It is just pretty embarrassing. Yeah, and my grandma, who was a major influence for me kind of growing up creatively and just like as a person, she really kind of shaped me into the person that I am. You know, her and my parents, obviously. So my grandma was a very creative person, or at least I thought she was at the time. She was a really good artist. I remember trying to copy or do kind of art kind of similar to her, and I wasn't bad. Like I wasn't a bad artist. I was like okay, right? I had like at one point I had like a art Instagram. I was like not bad, but I wasn't like good. I wasn't like outstandingly good, right? So my grandma kind of started to push this idea onto me that maybe I should change just my medium of expression, right? And I started to think like, oh, I like to write, sometimes I like to just write these like fan stories, whatever, but I'd love to draw a manga or whatever. So then I was just like, why don't I just like write my own original stories, right? The original stories I would do in manga. Why do I keep doing writing these fan arts when I can just take my manga stories and just kind of write them? So that's what I did. I started to write. I started off like writing kind of crossover stuff. So I had an original character. You guys have read Age of Darkness. His name's Kay. He was the main character, and I would cross him over with a bunch of like characters that I loved in various shows like Naruto. I played the Kingdom Hearts games, so I would cross him over with like Sora from Kingdom Hearts. So there's a lot going on there, but then eventually, like I started to, I was 14, I started to write my first actual original story, Age of Darkness, which took me 2 years to finish writing. Yeah, because I started at 14. Published at 17. So 2 years to finish writing, 1 year of editing, and all that good stuff. And then I eventually published it when I was 17, which was a very exciting moment for me. And yeah, that's overall how I got into writing. I think a lot of it like stemmed from my love for manga, my love for comics, my love for reading. But I didn't start off like writing, like I started off with doing comics before, or like really bad comics before I actually started to write. And I guess it was my grandma who kind of decided, or not decided, she like said, hey, if you think that you're a bad artist, which I did, but I feel like a lot of artists think that they're bad artists until they like make it, so honestly I could have stuck on the track of being an artist, but it's really hard. But yeah, I decided to kind of branch off that path and change my medium of expression. And now, I guess recently over the years, once I entered college, I started to get more involved in comics, developing comics, because I realized like, hey, sometimes comics, the artists, the writers don't have to be able to draw, which is cool. But yeah, no, a lot of my stories have been inspired by manga, inspired by comics, inspired by television, more visual stuff. Whereas my writing, I would say like the stories are inspired by those, and then my writing styles take a lot of inspiration from my favorite novels as well. Yeah, that's how I got into writing. So I just wanted to thank you guys for watching the video. Make sure to drop a like if you, I guess, like the video. Make sure to subscribe as well to get more, I guess, writing tips. We're gonna do some book reviews, stuff like that. Trying to diversify the type of content that I'm starting to make, but so far it's all been writing tips. But you know, we'll get some new stuff out there. It's just been a busy couple of months. And maybe comments how you got into writing, you know, or reading, or how you ended up doing whatever you're passionate about, right? I think that it's really awesome to be, you know, to find something that you're very passionate about. So I mean, if it's books, it's books. If it's writing, it's writing. If it's reading, it's reading. I think it's awesome that you guys are here because you're probably passionate about something if you found my channel. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. And I will leave all the links to my novels, comics, all that good stuff below, and you guys can check those out. All right. See you guys later. Bye.